Well, actually, in today's video, we're going to have a look at weather for the next 8 to 10 days today, which is taking us towards the middle of June. We're getting well on now into the year, middle of June, around the 13th to the 15th. These 8 to 10 day charts are going to be taking us to. So, yeah, we're really pushing on through the year now, aren't we? So, we're going to have a look at the next 8 to 10 days. Question marks about next week's weather, really. Looks like it's like going to try and turn unsettled, but how unsettled this is going to get, I'm not sure, because we've still got blocking over Scandinavia. The jet stream pushing into that block is trying to bring low pressure in off the Atlantic, but quite how extensive this unsettled weather is going to be, I'm not that convinced about it, to be honest. I think models might be overdoing it a little bit, but we're going to have a look at the charts anyway in a moment and see what's going on. Before I get on with the video, I just want to explain about the advertising. I'm trying out some keyword ads on my pages, so some of the words on the pages could well be highlighted green and display links if you're running your cursor over them. Links to ads. Click through those ads and you go to the advertiser's website, see what they're all about. You'll be supporting GadsWeatherVids.com by doing that, and it's just something I experimented with to see what happens and what you think about it. So have a look at those links and click through, see what's going on. Support website by doing it. So let's start off with the 500 millibar height anomaly charts. Well, it's 500 millibars, you know this by now, but I have to explain it in case anybody's watching for the first time. 500 millibars at 18,000 feet is where we've got low pressure and high pressure developing in the atmosphere, and really this is what's giving us weather, because these areas of high pressure, low pressure run around, are moved around by the jet stream running above. Yeah, that's what gives us weather in essence. Of course, it's much more complicated than that, but bringing it down to its most basic level, that is what weather is: high pressure, low pressure being moved around by the jet stream. So we'll start off with the 8 to 10 day mean for the ECMWF here. This is the ECMWF on the left, the GFS is on the right. And we can see that both charts have actually got very similar ideas. Both charts have got high pressure sitting up to the northeast of the country at large, an extensive area of high pressure blocking to the northeast of British Isles over Scandinavia. GFS extends it back in towards Greenland as well, whereas the ECMWF doesn't quite so much, but it's the same sort of idea, blocking up to the northeast. Both have got troughs of low pressure in the Atlantic. The ECMWF got a very deep trough of low pressure there, below average heights, which is below average temperature at 18,000 feet. That extrapolates them to low pressure. GFS has got it as well, not quite so deep, but both models really going for the same idea, and both models have got the jet stream running around that trough, more or less into the British Isles, and the the GFS is doing it very similar, bringing the jet stream through to the south of the trough, running it more or less into the British Isles in 8 to 10 day time. Remember, this is around the 13th to the 15th of June. Now, this is pushing up against this blocking feature. Both models are agreeing that this blocking feature is sitting up to the northeast, and we've got the jet stream of the trough pushing in to that blocking feature. So basically, the idea is that there's a battle going on between high pressure to the northeast and low pressure out to the west. And we're talking about fractions here. Fractions making very big difference to the weather, because if we keep the block more in control of this, then we'll keep it basically settled away from the west and the northwest. If we have the trough though dominating this, it's going to be much more unsettled. It'll be very wet potentially, with some heavy rain, particularly in the west, but not exclusively. So it's that idea that we've had on and off throughout 2013 really, but we've got low pressure backing against high pressure to the northeast, and which pressure belt has the ascendancy is going to determine what kind of weather we get. Now, the GFS really wants to have the low pressure and the jet stream in control of this as we get through to that mid-month period. Look at all these precipitation spikes that the model is going for between around the 11th and the 15th or 16th of June. Some very large precipitation spikes there, indicating potential some really wet weather. But as I say, I think it could be overdoing it. That high pressure could well prove stronger than the GFS thinks it will, and it may limit the potential for the rainfall more out towards the west and the northwest. But I say there's only fractions in this. A few hundred miles, which is nothing in terms of a global model, really will make a big difference to whether we end up very wet next week or whether we end up largely dry away from the north and the northwest. So if we have a look at the temperature anomalies as well, or I should say the temperature ensembles, just very briefly, the red line here is where we should be for the time of year. We see we're warm at the moment, we're above average with the ensemble. Things stay more or less above average actually as we go through next week. We dip down a little bit, we don't keep it quite as warm as we are at the moment, or will be over the next 2 or 3 days. But really temperatures are doing quite well, no problems there, although maybe once we get on to the latter stage of the month, or second half of the month, we might see the temperatures starting to dip down a little bit more then, but that's a bit speculative. We're not really sorting out this mid-month period yet, so no point really looking beyond that. So temperature's not doing too badly next week. Have a look at the temperature anomalies for the next week, which takes us from the 6th of June to the 13th of June. We're going to be near normal really, a little bit above in the north, a little bit below maybe for some central parts of the country, but really these pale colours are indicating temperatures very much near normal, and much of the continent doing reasonably well with the temperatures next week. It's just down in Spain and Portugal and through some central parts of the continent we have temperatures substantially below average, but many other areas are going to be around or a little bit above average. So let's just have a look at the generic charts. This is the GFS model first of all. This is for Tuesday the 11th of June, and we're sort of putting into generic terms the idea I was explaining in the height anomaly charts, because this is summing things up very well. We've got high pressure there sitting up to the northeast around Scandinavia. The low pressure is out to the west of the country. That's where the trough is. Jet stream running underneath that, pushing into the British Isles, but coming up against that area of high pressure. So does the high pressure have the ascendancy, or does the low pressure in the Atlantic have the ascendancy? Well, let's see what the model does. Eventually it pushes these low pressures through as we get through to a week away, Thursday the 13th of June. We are pushing low pressure in there across the country, so we bring some of the trough through, not the whole of the trough. We've not got a big trough sitting over the country, but we are bringing some of the low pressure through, but the high pressure is very dominant up over Scandinavia, and it really wouldn't take much actually to have these low pressures further out into the Atlantic. It wouldn't take much of an adjustment for that, but we do eventually end up with low pressure on Friday the 14th sitting right over the top of the country on this particular model run of the GFS, and GFS has been quite consistent, so we have to take it seriously. We've got low pressure there, that's quite wet, but that high pressure, as I say, it's very extensive, 1025 millibars over Scandinavia. It wouldn't take much of an adjustment to keep this low pressure much more out into the Atlantic and never really run it in. Once you get through to 10 days away, Sunday the 16th, this particular run, the 6 o'clock run of the GFS model, actually wants to build high pressure back in again. So any breakdown to the high pressure is very short-lived anyway, and then we start to build the high pressure back in with high pressure over Scandinavia and high pressure again ridging in from the Azores. So that would be settling things down in any case as we go into next weekend. So not at all convinced about this idea that it's going to be breaking down. The ECMWF, well again, very similar for the start of next week. The high pressure sitting up to the east and the northeast, but low pressure in the Atlantic. What does the ECMWF do? Well, it brings some energy through as we go into Thursday the 13th. This is probably wetter for the north and west, perhaps not too wet in the south and the southeast. And then sort of, well, we're building a bit of a ridge there across northern parts of France, still unsettled and low pressure dominating in the north. And as we get through to the 10-day period, Sunday the 16th, well, it's hard to say really whether low pressure or high pressure is dominating. We've still got a very deep area of low pressure out in the Atlantic, and we've probably got some sort of weather front waving through the central parts of the country, so it could be quite wet perhaps for northern England if that's right, but close to southern parts of England we're actually very close to a ridge of high pressure, and the low pressure really is being restricted more out to the north and the northwest. So I'm really not convinced about this idea that we're breaking down particularly substantially anyway next week. It will turn more unsettled, I think we can say that with quite good confidence. It will be more unsettled next week, but I'm not convinced this is going to be a really extensive sort of breakdown. The GEM, the Canadian model, finally, same idea for the Start of next week, high pressure really dominates to the northeast, low pressure out in the Atlantic, and then we run those low pressures into the high pressure as we go through the middle of next week, bringing some rain, particularly to the north and northwest, probably not too much in the south and southeast. And then this is quite interesting as we get through to the end of next week. It's got signs there of a bit of a plume going on. Everything is shifting round more to the south, so that's bringing up some quite hot air actually out of central parts of the Mediterranean. With that, the high pressure is further back to the east, the low pressure is stalling out in the Atlantic, and as I say, we're bringing quite a hot sort of plume up with that, I think, from the south. So that's sort of the first sign is made that we could have a thundery plume as we go into the end of next week and the weekend. There's the low pressure trying to push in. Very warm, the temperatures potentially in the east will probably be up to, say, around 27 degrees with that, maybe 80 Fahrenheit in the southeast. As I say, it would be turning increasingly thundery as this low pressure tries to push in. So that's the first sort of real plume of the season being indicated by the GM. And then eventually the GM wants to push that low pressure through as we get through to Sunday the 16th. This is rather different to the GFS and the ECM idea. We push that low pressure through, taking the heat away to the east of the country. Blocking is developing up over Greenland and Iceland, and this is probably a more extensive breakdown coming in with this low pressure off the Atlantic, a good deal more unsettled eventually that would probably get. So that's a different idea from the Canadian model. And as I say, the GM is often a little bit different to the GFS and the ECMWF anyway, but if that's right, we get very warm at the end of next week and turn it thundery Friday, Saturday, so that would be quite interesting if that's right. But I think really we've got to go with the GFS and the ECMWF, and both models are really I'm not convinced about either model, to be honest. We've got high pressure to the northeast, but low pressure to the west. They're battling with each other. Which pressure belt has the ascendancy later next week? I'm not convinced about it yet, so we're going to need more runs. More runs are needed to see what's going to be happening as we go through the last stages of next week. It will turn more unsettled next week, but the question with this is how unsettled, how extensive, and how long does it last? And I'm just not convinced the models are really there in answering those questions just yet. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.